Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын иргэн архитектор Ким Дюпон Мадиние оролцож байна.
Ким Дюпон Мадиние Fulbright тэтгэлэгт судалгааны ажилтан архитекторч. Ким Францын École Génie Manuel-ийн сургууль, Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын Rhode Island-ийн их сургуулийг архитекторч мэргэжлэр төгссөн. Тэрээр Францын Версайлес хотын эрчим хүчний зарцуулалтыг 90% багасгах декаталон нарны эрчим хүчний төсөл дээр ажиллаж байсан ба Улаанбаатарын гэр хорооллын төслийн менежерээр мөн техник технологийн дээд сургуульд барилга архитекторын багшаар ажилладаг. Ким Дюпон Мадиние барилгын архитектор, дизайн, хөгжүүлэлт, шир бүл гадаа засал, M1 дотоод засал, нарны эрчим хүчний хэрэглээгээр мэргэшсэн.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Thank you for coming to this program. Very interesting for me was very interesting to discover that you came to Mongolia under Fulbright research fellowship and studied gear and design and energy efficiency of gear. Please tell us why you are doing that. What happened?
So I've had an ongoing interest in textile housing enclosures because when I was a student in architecture at the Rhode Island School of Design, we built a textile passive house, which is basically a very, very sustainable home because it enables you to use 90% less energy than you would in a traditional home.
90%?
Less energy.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very, very efficient. And I really wanted to learn more about how people live in textile homes because we built it for France, but there was still a lot that we had to understand. And I wanted to learn about Mongolian culture and Mongolian history of living in the Gэр as a result.
When it happened to learn about Mongolia first time?
Probably 19
okay.
or 18. I mean, I learned about them when I was younger. But
and you have decided to learn more. And how it happened that you got that scholarship?
So I was working in research and development for building materials. And I'd actually been trying to come to Mongolia for a very long time. But there was never really a right time. And I ended up finding a really great partner here. By the name of Gэр Hub. So Badrun Gardi, who's the founder of Gэр Hub, and Inkshin are my partners at Gэр Hub, and their goal is to develop prototypes for Gers to make them more energy efficient in the Gэр districts. And then my other partner that I found once I arrived in Mongolia was Odgerel, who founded another NGO called EcoTown. And it's basically a community collaborative in the Songenhorhen district. And they are about 300 families that are geared towards improving their community. So they do trash collection, we had like a fundraiser to build a children's playground. They have a variety of different initiatives to improve their environment and make their district.
And I understand you have been living in Gэр as well.
Yeah.
How did you find it and how long you were there?
So technically I was only living there for 3 weeks. I lived there late November, early December. And I lived with 3 different families at a time. So, one family for 1 week at a time. And I loved it. I mean, for me, I feel like I'm really lucky because the Fulbright, just to give you a little more information, the goal of the Fulbright is about mutual understanding. So the point of me being here is not for me to come with preconceived notions about how the Gэр should be or how it should change, but learn from Mongolian culture and with Mongolian partners about how it should evolve. And so living in the Gär districts for me was really, really important because I really wanted to understand the challenges that families are facing beyond, the statistics of the reports that you read. And, it's also really nice because you learn a lot more in terms of the nuances behind the practices of how to move throughout the space and where things belong and what's critical. And
so what are you think their challenges? What are your learnings about
my
that?
learnings? I think that it's really interesting because, there's challenges in terms of there's no plumbing, so it's very hard in terms of managing human waste. And then a lot of the families are really hardworking. It's interesting because a lot of people told me that Mongolians have a hard time working as a team, but I actually found the opposite. The neighbors seemed to kind of help each other out. One of the women that I lived with, she was pregnant, and so her neighbor would help collect water for her, which I thought was really sweet. And so I think, I learned a lot about why everyone is using coal and why that's the only option. I also think it's very interesting because, I've been living back and forth between the Gär districts and downtown and speaking with educated Mongolians who think that, the reason why there's this pollution problem is because people are burning dirty coal. And so there's a lot of miseducation also, I think.
It is not?
It's not.
Why?
Because what happens is that when you're burning coal in a stove, the combustion level isn't high enough to really get rid of particulate matter. And so that's why power plants are much more efficient. It's not only because it's all concentrated and then you can diffuse it in a more efficient way, but also because it's at much higher temperatures, so you're not producing as much pollution. And then I think that families are trying their best to do the right thing, and they all just want better lives for themselves. And there's also very small nuances that made me understand that continuing to use coal-burning stoves, even if they become more efficient with additions, I don't think will end up being the right solution in the long term.
So in any way, Mongolians, while they are living in the Gär, in the cold weather, they have to use coal, and coal is the most efficient way. But that's what you're saying.
No, so I think coal is the cheapest, but I think that I've seen a lot of people trying to figure out alternative solutions, but I think what's really hard is because science isn't always intuitive. I think people's intentions are good when they try different solutions, but it's very hard to have a measured understanding of the differences. So one of the things that I did in my project was I installed a sensor package in 4 Gärs, 4 or 5 Han Gärs, in order to have a baseline understanding of how the Gär is currently performing. So where are the major energy losses, what's the R value, which means like the wall's ability to retain heat, and all these other characteristics. So that's like a first understanding of how the Gär is currently behaving, almost like getting its temperature, right? And so in developing the new design that we came up with Gär Hub and EcoTown, we took that information and then added the Passivhaus Standard, which is the standard I was mentioning earlier that enables would in theory provide these kind of systemized approach to make the Gär more energy efficient, while maintaining the key cultural characteristics.
Interesting. You said you set certain sensors, temperature-wise, where and how you were living in winter season in Mongolia. So what is your take on that? What those that they say?
So I think something that's pretty terrifying is that the pollution can get as bad as 2,500 PM. And yeah, I'm sure people are familiar now maybe with the metrics, but between 400 and 500 is already toxic. So we're 5 times higher than what's even within the measured understanding of the impacts of the air pollution on people's health. And I think it's pretty scary because, you know, even though I was handing out masks to people and there's things that you can do to try and help reduce the impact of that air pollution, but it's everywhere. It's indoors and it's outdoors also. We put, Gär had a partner from Stanford that put air quality sensors indoors as well as outdoors, and that 2,500 particulate matter measurement was indoors.
Indoors?
Indoors.
So now you talk about this Gär. Will this project help to solve this issue?
Yes.
How?
So it's important to understand what we're aiming for is a very specific target market. There's a variety of other housing initiatives happening in Mongolia currently, some from larger organizations like the ADB, where they're trying to develop apartment complexes, and some are and other architecture firms or construction companies are trying to develop energy efficient individual homes. And we're Gär and EcoTown, they're both really trying to help make the Gär more energy efficient and modernizing it for the 21st century. So we're aiming the 215,000 households who are currently living in the Gär districts.
2,500?
I think it's about 215,000 households.
Okay.
And about half those households are living in Gärs currently.
Yes.
So the idea is that the design that we've come up with, if the average monthly salary is about 1 million MNT, the mortgage cost that families would have to pay for this alternative home would be about 250,000 MNT a month. So that's a quarter of someone's salary, which is what you would often recommend when someone is renting an apartment, for example.
Quarter of your income.
Yeah.
Then what kind of materials we talk again about this new Gär or this ideal Gär? Tell us about that type of Gär.
So a lot of the internal components are standard insulation materials that people use today in modern construction. What we've maintained is the wooden components of the Gär, so the han, the un, the ton, but we've taken now a 6 han Gär, so that the space is a bit bigger. There's now a proper septic system. There's now a proper plumbing system in terms of a shower and a sink with running water. And we also have the ability to create separate rooms.
Separate inside? Or
So-
you can rearrange the spaces, right?
A little bit.
How does the heating work?
So it's an electric heating system.
An electric, okay.
Yeah, it's an air-to-air heat pump system.
What is that?
Basically, it's a pump. And it almost works like the opposite of an air conditioning system, where it like pumps air in, and then like with the friction of that pump, basically heats up the air and
It absorbs the air and then put it back, hot air, right?
exactly.
How does is it new system or what is this?
So it's a Chinese system. It was recently tested by a professor named Kirk Smith, who's a Nobel Prize winner from and teaches currently at Berkeley. And he's very well known for developing efficient stove systems, but he found that this heat pump system in a traditional Gär that's not retrofitted to be energy efficient is actually less its consumption of energy is cheaper than that of coal, how much families currently spend on coal per year.
I see. So the families don't need to use coal for heating.
Exactly.
How does this device look like?
Just like a standard electric heater. I would say it's probably half that size on its side, and then a little bit longer.
And then it is, you put into the electricity, and then what? This device itself can absorb the air, and through certain other way, the kind of circulation.
Yeah, just like a traditional.
And that's way efficiency than this one, for example, this traditional one?
Yeah, so it basically has like a 3-part pump system. And what's really special about it is that it can actually work efficiently in negative 35 degrees Celsius temperature. Yeah. So that's why it's something that Mr. Smith found specifically for Mongolia, because that's one of the biggest challenges, is finding an electrical heating system that can work efficiently in this kind of climate.
Wow, this is the first time I hear. Mr. Smith, where does he work, you say?
Berkeley.
Berkeley, okay.
Berkeley University.
And how often he comes to Mongolia?
I think 2 to 3 times a year, maybe.
A year?
Yeah.
Oh, I should meet him.
Yeah.
So this, how many gears so far are being installed with all this stuff?
So 1 gear so far.
1 gear, okay.
Yeah. What we want to do is...
this is kind of demonstration. Demo
yeah.
gear.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's in the Horhen district. And I can show you on Google Maps. Maybe.
Okay. So have you been spending a night there when the temperature is very cold? Does it work?
So we're building it. We're beginning construction August 1st.
Oh, this August 1st?
Yeah.
Or it's still you to come to go there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many gear will be there first?
Just 1.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of the families whose gear we were monitoring this past winter, they're the one who's actually moving into this now energy efficient gear. So what's really great is that we're going to install the same sensor package.
How many of them will be around the gear?
Just
the system.
The heating system.
Yes.
Just 1.
And it is efficient for the whole gear. How about if you will make a separation? Does to the top is open area, right?
So what we've done is that the way it's positioned, it's supposed to basically produce enough heat for the square footage of the space. So the total square footage of this gear is now 48 meters squared. But what we've added is the gear is actually now more deeply embedded into the ground to retain the heat from the earth. And then that also actually provides more height internally. So what happens is, if you want to have images, if you'd like. Yeah. But what happens is that means that now you have a bit better ceiling height, and then you have a separate bedroom area that you can close off if you want, or keep open on the north end. And then there's a loft space above the kitchen area that the children can sleep in.
You said you can, on the top of the kitchen. Okay, interesting design. So how deep it goes down?
It goes about a meter deep.
A meter, and you go into the gear, and you go down.
So what we've done is the earth. What we're going to do is basically the earth is going to surround it, and then we're creating a path into it. So the gear from the outside essentially looks like the same proportions that you would normally see a gear, except now there's also a south-facing window that's about 2 meters wide and 1.5 meters tall, in order to have solar heat gain throughout the season.
Where the door faces to?
Normally, yeah. So now the door is still facing south, but instead of, while this window now maximizes solar heat gain in the interior and also having a view, now the door is still facing south, but it's slightly moved to the right.
To the right. Okay, so you think in this way we will keep the architecture of gear itself. The material will probably be completely different than the current one.
So yeah, we no longer have the cotton fabric
Yes.
on the exterior because it's not water resistant. And one of the things that I learned is that when I was living in the Gare areas, I also interviewed 18 different families to understand more about their living aspirations, like why did they come to UB, what's their job, what's their income, why do they like the Gare districts, what do they don't like about it, and why do they prefer bastions over Gares. So I took all that information in before beginning the design in order to use it to address the design accordingly. And then once we came up with 3 passive Gare designs and 4 passive bastion designs, so I call them passive designs because they're using the Passivhaus Standard. I went back to the Gare districts and asked families what they thought. So they told me, the kitchen can't be here, the door needs to be facing this way. So it was good feedback because I was trying to understand what the limits were in terms of how flexible we could be. And so from that, we created a final passive Gare and a final passive bastion design. And then we elaborated on those to see what would be the most efficient in terms of cost.
So basically this design is your design?
No.
Of Gare?
No. Because I'm working with all Mongolian partners.
I see. So altogether you are creating through these interviews, through the observations, through your data sensor data, you are creating kind of a Gare that will meet ideally the needs
Yes, exactly.
who's inside and also eco-friendly.
Exactly.
Wow, sounds very interesting. How long do you think, when you think you will complete all this project?
So we're hoping, in theory, the construction should only take 3 weeks, but because it's a first prototype, it will probably take longer. It'll definitely be completed before October 1st. And when it's done, I'll be sure to let you know so you guys can come and see it.
Yes, definitely. And once it is done, how much it will cost, you think?
So it costs about 30 million MNT. But again, what's important to understand is that now families have made a long-term investment.
Yes.
So in taking a mortgage loan for this housing system, what's going to happen is that one, as I mentioned earlier, the regular cost to pay off that loan is about 250,000 MNT per month over 10 years.
Yes.
And on top of that, now families won't have to rebuild their Gare, but they also won't have to, if they were to choose to build their own bastion, they won't be using as much energy, they won't be burning coal, they won't be spending as much on energy.
So the surrounding cost will be way down.
Yes.
Wow. Will it have, outside it looks like Gare, or it is how, the ton is on the top or roof, or how does it work?
Yeah, so it's very similar. I think what will be noticeably different is it will have some more modern materials, like, for example, the south-facing window. It'll be triple pane glass.
How about the rooftop?
Also,
will we still light like this, or?
Yeah. So we kept it on because it's so important. But it's now also, there's really triple pane glass up top.
Will you have we call it this column? 2 columns?
No. So that's actually one of the things that we spent a lot of time working on, is that we asked families whether they thought it was okay for us to remove the 2 columns in the center. And the feedback that we got was yes. Because they're looking for the same modern amenities that you and I are looking for in our apartments.
So there will not be no columns?
Yeah.
And then basically it will be giving more room to go around and to... Interesting. And the kitchen will be still in the center?
So the kitchen will be slightly to the right. What happens is that when you, let's say this is the Gare. So now you have the entrance that's slightly to the right, like this. The south-facing door is here, north is here. You walk in, and then there's a small entrance space here where you take a mudroom where you take off your shoes. And then you can go directly, then there's another door to go into the bathroom area. or you can turn left, and that's where you enter the ger itself.
So it will be more spacious.
Yes.
Way spacious.
Yeah.
Very ergonomic design.
Exactly.
Very fascinating. The whole project, if it is done by October 1st, what do you think it will be replicated? How many of them will be done next year? Or it depends on the people's demand, right?
It depends on the demand. So what we're trying to do is that first, we're testing it throughout this winter season because we want to see where the mistakes were. Because it's a prototype, the reality is it won't be perfect. So we want to make sure that we have all the problems solved before we start marketing it at a large scale. But what we're doing is that we're submitting the project to the Mongolian Green Finance Corporation so that it is a subsidized mortgage system. And so that the interest rate that families have to pay on the loan is not between 22 or 25%, which it can sometimes be, but it is
Way down.
Way down at 8%.
Wow. So there will be streets. We call it hasha, many hasha. There will be there, but this waste system, this plumbing, all go. What infrastructure is to be made from the city, right?
So that's for now. It's a septic. It's an individual septic system.
Understand.
And so it will be able to, with bacteria from I'm forgetting the company name, but there's a French company that have these special bacteria that basically, if you put it in your septic tank, it actually eats away the waste.
I see.
So as long as you're not putting.
So it will be so far for this independent one.
Yes.
But down the road, better to have this pipeline. Everything the system is more efficient, right? Basically, in the U.S., there is many houses, but first of all, they make infrastructure that can suck everything and to put that way. Well, okay, I'm very happy to learn that you are part of this design, and many Mongolians working, and hopefully it will have everything done on time. So what other observations you would like to share that surprised you in terms of living Gär?
I think this is actually one of my favorite discoveries that I couldn't have anticipated. Sadly, recently Trump was elected in the U.S. And there's been a lot of conflict in terms of views. And I think one of my favorite things that I had learned throughout this process is that I've been learning about how at times the way some people view people from downtown view people in the Gär districts is very condescending, and which I can understand the frustration because of the air pollution. But living in the Gär districts and being with those families and seeing that most of them are hardworking and most of them are trying. But there's a lot of misunderstanding on both sides. And I think what I've loved is really seeing that it's like just more time needs to be spent in the Gär areas for people to start understanding why these issues are occurring. And the reason why I bring up Trump, I guess, is because, when he was initially elected, a lot of people were saying things along the lines of like, on the Democratic side, we're like, how could you be so stupid? Like, clearly he's a corrupt businessman, et cetera, et cetera. But then when I was living in the Gär districts, I heard the same dialogue about people in the Gär districts, but then there's also, you realize how like so much small misinformation adds up. So like, for example, families don't think that they're burning trash, but what happens is that they're still putting their plastic candy wrapper in the stove because they think it's so small it doesn't matter. And that's still a problem. And that's why like the stove has to just go away. But the truth is also just because they're burning coal in their stove, it's not because the coal hasn't been washed properly that it's creating all this particulate matter. It's because it needs to be in a power plant to burn efficiently. So I think that's my favorite part, is like really understanding that to really understand a subject, you have to take the time on both sides.
Okay.
To learn.
Interesting observation. I would like to thank you for a wonderful conversation. It's a lot inspiring and giving hope, I think, to many Mongolians living in Gär, because you on two sides, young people from US, from Mongolia, working as a team, and I'm looking forward to see that get. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
За хүн үзэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Америкийн архитектор Ким Дюпон Мадиние оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.